Well, you may be pleased to know on this Easter day that I will not be repeating what I did just before Christmas, which was to sing my sermon. No, I think that was a one-off. I've been seriously advised by many people that that is the beginning and end of my singing career. So my sermon today, it focuses, of course, on Easter and the subject of resurrection. Now, in many churches up and down the land, of course, Jesus is the subject in religious terms. But I'm going to actually ask for forgiveness from the good Lord, if he doesn't mind, if I talk about things closer to home that I think we would like to see resurrected. And that's why it's my question of the day. You see, I'd like to breathe new life into the UK, resurrect some of the things that used to work but don't seem to work. I mean, maybe we should actually start in religious terms. Could we resurrect a good old-fashioned Archbishop of Canterbury that actually focuses on helping his congregation rather than on woke Wally issues or getting involved in politics? I thought the Archbishop of Canterbury is supposed to look after the congregation. Maybe that's a good thing to start with. The second thing I'd like to resurrect is Easter eggs that bear some relation in size to the packaging that they're in. I mean, it seems to me, even though we've got inflation, the size of the Easter eggs in the box seems to be deflating. All you get at the moment, I think, is a lot of hot air. And sometimes, of course, there are sweets inside the Easter egg, but even the number of those has diminished. You'd be lucky if you get 2, let alone sort of half a dozen like you used to get. So I think I'm concerned about the deflation in the size of the egg. Talking of the size of things, do you remember the old box of Quality Streets? They used to be enormous, the old tin of Quality Streets. I mean, that was a proper thing in the old days. And now it's a plastic sort of small carbuncle. I mean, it's again, deflated in size. So I want to resurrect the old box of Quality Street in terms of size and quantity. But perhaps matters more serious that we need to resurrect. What about the concept of roads without potholes? I mean, driving today it's a lottery. You're sort of weaving around all the potholes in the road. It's really unbelievable. The other concept in transport terms that would be useful to resurrect surely is those things called trains that used to run sometimes on time. Anyone quite fancy that? Trains that run on time? Or what about car park ticket machines that you can actually use cash as opposed to smartphones and everything that makes it much harder for certain people, elderly people? There's another good old-fashioned concept that we could perhaps resurrect, and that's going to work, just turning up. Maybe that would help get the economy back on track. Or resurrect politicians of stature. People of serious stature, the Tony Benns, the Thatchers. I'll use the whole lot and I'll get some attack for it. But real people of stature, the late Nigel Lawson, who just passed away. Even Tony Blair, maybe, I know. But these were people of stature as opposed to today's career policy wonks that have gone into politics straight out of university and don't seem to have any integrity. What about resurrecting the idea that work actually pays and that we could keep most of our earnings rather than pay it over to the taxman, who then spends it rather badly? Here's another thing that we could perhaps resurrect, and that's the concept that police, you actually see some police, some bobbies on the beat. Would that be useful? I think it probably would. And even the fact they might even turn up to a crime rather than just answer a phone and give you a crime number. Maybe they can actually try and investigate a crime and possibly find a criminal, prevent crimes, charge people, actually penalise people who are guilty. I think that'd be quite a useful thing to resurrect. Maybe you disagree. I think it's really important that we feel safe on our streets. Maybe police should focus more on that rather than on policing tweets or painting cars rainbow colours. I'd also like to resurrect a smaller state, because the size of the state spending has grown in the last 15 to 20 years by about 1/3. It's huge. It seems that everybody wants the state to do everything. Even cycling instructors, for heaven's sake. You know, it's all gone pear-shaped when we're looking to the state to teach our children to ride a bicycle. What about resurrecting parent responsibility? But here's an important thing we'll be talking about later that I want to resurrect. The concept of just two genders. Yes, man and woman. A bit like Adam and Eve. Do you remember that story? I think it's pretty simple. I think it's pretty straightforward. Let's not confuse issues. Resurrect the idea that teachers are there to actually turn up in classrooms rather than go on strike. And when they're there, could they just teach children how to read, how to write, how to count, how to learn about history and science and things, rather than questioning children's gender and watching drag queens in lessons, for heaven's sake? We don't want this stuff. We want to resurrect traditional schools where parents can trust what is taught in schools without confusing children with these dangerous, delusional, multiple gender garbage and claptrap. I've talked about it before and I will keep talking about it. Oh, here's another one we should resurrect. I was told this, I don't really know much about this, but I was told perhaps resurrecting traditional forms of dating, not swiping left or right on some app. Apparently there are dating apps. I haven't signed up to any of them, I hasten to add. Or we could resurrect the idea that if you need to see a doctor, you could actually see one today, maybe tomorrow, rather than weeks later. Seems a sensible thing to resurrect. Or the idea that you could actually, if you call an ambulance, hope it might rock up in 15 minutes or so rather than 15 hours? Is that a sensible thing to resurrect? What would you like to resurrect? I'm keen to hear your ideas. I'm just going through my list this morning. The idea perhaps we should resurrect that people can afford to heat their homes. We're an island that sits on a huge pile of a century's worth of energy treasure. We could have cheap energy, so we could all afford to heat our homes as much as we want, rather than be petrified about turning the heating on. I think we should resurrect the use of cheap energy, our own energy. We'd also, at the same time, here's the thing, folks, yes, we'd actually save CO2 if we use our own energy than importing it from halfway across the world. Or perhaps a sensible idea to resurrect would be if you've got an old knackered power station that's done its time and its time expired, maybe you should have built one to replace it, rather than risk rationing and energy blackouts. Seems pretty much like common sense to me. What about resurrecting the idea that as an island we should be able to control our own borders and decide who's coming in and who's going out lawfully on a sensible, controlled basis? And the idea that actually people who try to come here illegally, that we say thanks, but there's a lawful way to come here, folks, and if you try to come here illegally, the answer's no, folks. You're not coming in. Is that a sensible thing to resurrect? Seems it to me. But here's a really important thing that we should, in the world where there are dangerous threats around the world, we need to make sure that we are robust and strong in the defence of our realm. So what about resurrecting the idea that if we give away a whole load of weapons and ammo to an ally, then maybe we should actually place the orders pronto so that we can replace the weapons and replace the ammo so that we've actually got our own capability to defend ourselves. I mean, this may sound old-fashioned, but it does seem to me that a strong, robust defence of the realm is important. It's important to support our allies. But let's not take years and years to replace what we've given away. Now, this is another really important thing to resurrect. And that is, I know this is a bit personal, but I'd quite like to resurrect a Liverpool football team that can actually win enough matches to get close to winning the league. Could someone have a word with Jurgen? A little quiet word in his show, like, to get his act together and the team's act together? I don't know. Meanwhile, Cliff in Berkshire, he says he'd like to resurrect British humour and common sense. You're absolutely right, Cliff. No question at all. There are so many things that I want to resurrect because that's what would make our country great again. And we can be a fantastic, proud, strong nation. But there really is quite a lot we need to resurrect. Call me, text me, tweet me. What would you like to resurrect this Easter Sunday? And with that, here endeth my Sunday sermon.